So, this is about loss. Well, actually, I don't know. This is about nothing. But to tell a story, this is about the end of an effect, an end of a need, end of searching, end of feeling like something is lost, something is missing. End of hope and meaning. End of something other than this. Because this is it. This is all there is. This is already wholeness. This is already perfection. This is already home. This is already fulfillment. So nothing was ever found. Nothing was achieved. No one got anything. No one wins this race. No one finally says, I got it. I found what I was always looking for. What can seem to happen is that stories are really believed in. A story about a me in time that has a life and has all of these things, built all of these things, searched in so many different ways, possibly didn't even know that I was searching, but through that seeking, a whole life was built. This imaginary life feels like mine, and I feel real. But even though I have all of this stuff, it still doesn't feel like enough. And so, what can happen is that this illusory sense of something being lost, something missing, can vanish. Back into nothing, where it came from, what it actually is. And then what's seen is that that story, or all of the stories, were never really real. And I'm not denying that they feel really real and they feel really convincing. And with this apparent happening, the loss of that imaginary person, the whole life of that person, it dissolves. In the story, things are just taken away more and more. This unconditional love can feel really brutal. It absolutely dissolves everything. And in return, there is this resting. It's just this. There's this okayness. There's this natural fulfillment. There's this peace. That sense of lack, that sense of something missing seems gone. Any image of the future can't really be believed in. Any memory of the past is not seen as real. And really, all you're left with is just this. It's seen that everything is an appearance. Everything is empty. Everything is nothing. Everything is dancing, playing, appearing. Everything is this. There is no separation. Everything is boundless, edgeless, borderless, absolutely free. So everything is included in this. Separation is this. The sense of something missing is this. All stories are this. All words, all expression, totally empty. All appearances. If you want a visual, I could describe it as like this isn't literally how it's seen, but there's just this sense that even though things may appear solid, it's barely there. It's made of smoke. It's made of vapor. It's there and it's not. So this doesn't necessarily feel very pretty. It doesn't feel very nice sometimes. The death of oneself, the death of one's life. There is really no saying how it will feel and what it will be like for every apparent body, how it will happen, what will remain, what will dissolve, if there will be an expression of this or not. Everything is so unknown, and everything has been unknown. It is unknown. The mind's job is to want to know. It wants to really solidify and define and know everything, or whatever it finds important or it values. It really wants to know. It feels like it's really important. So it feels like now there's such an absolute thorough disappearance of everything. Everything that felt real but wasn't. It really has dissolved into nothing and now is seen to have been always empty the whole apparent time. So even the devastation and the worry that all of these things were crumbling, or now there's no worry. And this is kind of what the seeker always wanted. This silence that's beyond silence, that's not really silence. I don't know what it is. It's this utter nothingness. This end of a need for something other than. And the odd thing is, this can't be manufactured. This can't be mimicked or attained, because this apparent stripping away is happening on its own. This natural relaxation or resting is happening on its own. The apparent more and more thorough dissolving of a future and a past is happening on its own. The seeker could never have imagined that it would be this thorough. It can feel like a real loss. It can feel like a real death before the body dies. And this is very different from let's say in a spiritual, if you have a spiritual awakening experience where you felt like there was a death, that death is owned by the me. That happening is for the me. That is experienced by the me. So that is very different from an actual dissolving of an illusory me, this sense of need, this sense of lack, this seeking. The total death of that is something completely different. That's the total end of you. The total end of your life. And for here, a lot of things are changing in the sense that nothing is lacking. So the energy to do is minimal. So even walking is only so much of that can be done. And it's shocking to see that walking the extra 20 minutes was actually that sense of need, that sense of I should, that sense of a person that wanted to be a certain way. The energy to eat is minimal. The energy to do the basics. It's not a struggle, it's just, it's there, but it's almost barely there. But this isn't a problem, and it's not like there's a worry, or it's not like it's just kind of what it is. And it seems like if more energy comes back, then that's what will happen. If it doesn't, that's just what's happening. No one's in control of this. No one can predict this. And So I'm not saying that this will happen to everybody. I have no idea. I guess there's just a report of what's apparently happening here. And there is a real beauty to this natural rest. But it is ironic that there can be such a deep desire for the end of a self, even though it is illusory, it's an effect. I don't know what it is. It's just a story to say that some sort of contraction is there and then it's gone. That's just a story. It does feel really real. It can feel really real that there is actual separation and there is this sense of seeking. Something is missing, something better can happen, a hope for a better future. So it can be really, really, really devastating. This liberation that's already the case, that no one achieves, no one gets this. It can just feel really devastating. I guess you can say for the body. As it's being consumed by this brutal love, there can be loud echoes of the me protesting that, yeah, this is not what I wanted, this is not what I expected. And all of this can seem like such an odd joke because all of that searching, all of that seeking, all of that trying to get, and even the devastation of the dissolving of this me, painful as it can be, to actually see that nothing's really happening, that nothing ever happened, that nothing had the meaning that we put on it. What a joke. That is crazy. So basically, all of that was a story, and there's nothing wrong with stories. It's basically how we communicate. And sometimes there is a distinction made that so the story of a child having trauma, having a certain protection mechanism that automatically happened and then repeated over the parent lifetime. And then the falling away of the story, of the protection mechanisms, the relaxing of the nervous system, the deconditioning. So the story of all of that, the story of being on a spiritual path and finding this message and then hearing about a contraction and then no contraction. They're all just stories. And they're all not real. It can feel really real. It can feel really convincing. I'm not denying that. But nothing is actually happening. And it was always the case. No one was actually doing, thinking, feeling anything. And yet, all of that was still happening. So whatever's being said here isn't more or less valuable than anything else. No story is really more or less value than any other story. Stories are beautiful. The seeing that everything is empty is beautiful. The story of the death of me is devastating, is hauntingly beautiful. How something can so badly want its own absence. And then when it's seen what's really being meant by this is already liberation, then there can be some horror. Like, wow, this is really not what I wanted. This is not what I expected. For here, there is still a preference for this. As horrific as it was at times, and this is really, there is such a beauty to this, such a natural resting. It is preferred over the deep sort of suffering and even the more subtle type of suffering of just the incessant mind chatter and even the subtle forms of seeking. So yes, I would say that it is worth it for no one, but that's not necessarily the case for everybody. And it can really feel horrific, apparently, in the story. It definitely did here. And yeah, I don't want to hide that. I don't want to hide how so utterly devastating this felt. This death of a me that never existed. Everything it really felt like it had is gone. And that wasn't taken lightly here. No one was doing that. It was just a reaction. But yeah, in the story, this really is about loss. Everything completely dissolving back into nothing. And from here, anger arises, frustration, joy, bliss, happiness. From here, sometimes it is difficult to tell a proper story. Because apparently you could say that there is an adjustment and interactions with apparent others are going to be really different. How much energy is there to do certain things will be probably different. There's no real saying. Like this isn't really thought about so much, but there is a bit of an interest in how things will apparently unfold and how this will look in a couple months or couple years. Yeah, it's just a fleeting thought because there is no such thing as a future. It's really difficult to have a point to these videos. I feel like I just talk and then it goes where it goes.